All right, I think we're live in all the places. Good evening, everybody. I'm Carol Williams, Williams Immigration. I help families and businesses navigate our U.S. immigration system. And I wanted to come on tonight to talk to you guys again. We had a lovely chat last night. Wanted to give you some updates and then answer some questions if you guys have any questions. I'm an immigration lawyer. I used to be a USCIS Adjudications Officer up at headquarters in Washington, D.C. So let's dive right in on the updates. It has actually really never occurred to me to talk to you guys about this one, so it's not really an update. It's more of just kind of an FYI. I was on a call today with someone, and they were concerned because they had filed their application on their own. It was an employment-based application, green card application, and they had gotten a big ol' request for further evidence, and they were concerned that if they then had help from an attorney responding to the RFE, and then, an attorney, myself, we would submit an attorney representation form signed by our client. They were concerned that the Immigration Service would think that there was something terrible going on in their application, and that they were trying to hide something. And the officers don't really care. They don't really care about that. That's not the case. If you have filed something and you feel like you're in over your head, it is best to get an attorney involved. If you feel like before you even file, if you feel sort of in over your head, you're not quite sure what's happening, you don't really understand the instructions, you don't know the law, you don't know policies, all the things, then it is best to get help, right? We use doctors and dentists and architects all the time, and we get help. But for some reason, people are under the mistaken impression that if you start working with an attorney, either at the beginning or midway through your case, that is a bad thing, and that will be perceived as a bad thing. It's not. So I wanted to just spread that little bit of that little nugget, that little bit of love. And the other thing I want to talk about, we talked about a little bit last night, but it bears repeating, that employment authorization documents no longer will have an automatic 540-day extension if they are timely filed. Those renewal EAD documents, that is as of today. That was released yesterday or Tuesday, Wednesday. It was released this week. We had like zero notice it was coming. So, for instance, if you are an employer and you have hired someone, they are using their work authorization is a standalone employment authorization document, and they need to get another one. They need to file for a renewal one based on the fact that they have a green card, an employment-based green card application pending right now. A green card application EAD is taking 7 months to process. That is what is on the USCIS website. At least it was last time I checked, maybe like yesterday. But the problem is it's taking them 7 months to adjudicate these, to process these. But we can only file 6 months, 180 days in advance of the expiration. So you do the math, that is a month employment gap. So we will see what happens with that. But as of right now, we are telling folks that they really need to stay on top of the expiration of their AEDs and file at the earliest possible time. So in the hopes to avoid an employment gap. So keep that in mind. The folks that are exempt from that rule are F1 OPT STEM students. So if you're going from F1 OPT to STEM OPT, you still have an automatic extension of 180 days. So keep that in mind. That is something that came out this week. So we'll see what happens with that. But I wanted to make sure that folks knew about that, because it is going to impact a lot of employers and employees alike. So let's get to some of these questions. I see you guys are already putting them in. what do we have here? Oh, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, as well as TikTok. And so before I sort of dive into some of your questions, while I am an immigration lawyer, I am not your immigration lawyer. So we are having an educational conversation. I cannot and would never give you legal advice in such a public forum. It destroys confidentiality. And I can't give legal advice to folks that aren't my clients. But if you'd like to be my client, you're welcome to click the link in bio, schedule consult. All my client relationships start that way. It gives me an opportunity to find out who you are, what your situation is, and how we can help. Let's see here. How can my spouse sponsor me? How can my spouse sponsor me if he has one current good tax year out of the 3 latest? Not quite sure what you mean by one good tax year. Your spouse has to meet the poverty limits as set by USCIS. So if your spouse does not meet those poverty limits, then you all are going to need a joint sponsor, a joint financial sponsor. Let's see here. What else do we have? Why did change of status take long? Like, I don't know if this is 12 or I-2 dependent to B2. I don't understand your question. I don't understand what you mean by, I don't know if that's 12 or I-2 dependent to B2, but change of status, initial applications, like it all takes a long time, right? It does. Like I can't, I wish I could tell you that. I wish I could wave a magic wand and everything would be adjudicated in like 2 weeks. That is just not the case on the family side of things or on the change of status dependent kind of applications. Applications, the processing times depend on the type of application filed and the office adjudicating the application. So if your application is at an office that has incredibly high workload and fewer officers, then it's going to take a long time to process the case. CIS over the years has, and I mean over like many years, they monitor workloads in the various offices and actively try to move workloads around so that the processing times are fairly steady per case type so that you don't see these wild swings with one office adjudicating an application in 4 days and another office taking 6 months. So why does it take so long? There are 1,001 reasons internally, just work process flow issues as to why applications take so long. I do believe there are a fair amount of roles open within the agency right now. So it could be that they are currently understaffed. When the current White House administration began, they were offering packages for people to leave the agency. Some people may have left the agency. I don't know what those numbers look like. So, I mean, it could be a myriad of things, but it really kind of breaks down to workflow process, which I know is not at all what you want to hear, but that is my take on sort of the processing times. I have 48-month extension letter and an expired green card. Can I travel? So I think you're asking the wrong question. I say this to folks all the time. You're asking the question of can you travel? The question you should be asking is should you travel? And there, for some folks, is a huge difference in those two questions and the answer. So can you travel with a 48-month extension letter with an expired green card? And then by an extension letter, I mean maybe you filed an I-90. Yes. The short answer is yes. You can buy a plane ticket, hop on a plane, and go out of the country. The better question is should you? So in that, I don't know. If there's any sort of criminal background, if there's any sort of criminal background, any sort of criminal history anywhere in the world at any point, even prior to receiving the green card, but especially after receiving the green card. But if there's any criminal history anywhere in the world at any time prior to receiving the green card, then I would say that you need to have a conversation with a lawyer to figure out whether or not that will impact your ability to come back into the country. If there is an outstanding deportation order that was received after you got your green card, then I would have a conversation with an immigration attorney. So there are instances where, and there are circumstances where green card holders should not be anywhere near airports right now. So can you? Sure. Should you? I have no idea. Really depends on your particular situation. I would recommend that you sit down with someone and have a detailed conversation. I will say this, I don't know if this applies to you, but most people, when they're asking a lawyer if they can do something, they have a concern as to why. There's a concern that is underlying that question. So that is the piece of the puzzle that you need to talk to somebody about. Again, not saying that's you, but that is most people that call my office. Let's see here. What does it mean if an I-130 and 45 appointment cancellation and rescheduled? Working Social Security number already issued, it means that your appointment was canceled and rescheduled. That's all it means. It is not, that doesn't necessarily mean a red flag to me without actually seeing what was filed, without actually seeing your application, seeing all of the pages, all of the things. It doesn't mean anything. It means that you're out. It means that there is a work process flow situation that happened and your appointment got canceled and rescheduled. So would you rather have shown up at your appointment and then tell you the day of that that they need to change your appointment, that they don't have the file, that your file hasn't arrived, that the file has arrived, but they don't quite know where it is, or that the officer is out on sick leave, on extended sick leave. Just because your appointment, just because your interview has been rescheduled does not necessarily throw up red flags for me. It just doesn't. I've had that happen before. Now again, if there's something in your application that is a red flag, they may be working through that red flag. The officer could have gotten the application and been like, oof, there's some things we need to work through here before we have them come in. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a sign of a good officer, looking at the application before you get there, and trying to work through some things beforehand. Does immigration check in naturalization about tax paperwork? So I think what you're asking is, does immigration look at whether or not you've paid your taxes? I think that's what you're asking. So the answer to that is this. USCIS is the government agency. They are not going to issue you a benefit if you are not all the way square and all the way in compliance with another agency. In this case, it's taxes, so it would be the IRS. If you have an issue with your tax paperwork, your tax filings, your income tax owed, fix that before you start to apply for citizenship. The non-payment of taxes or the non-filing of taxes can be seen as lacking good moral character, which means that you would not qualify for citizenship. That means you wouldn't meet all the requirements. So if you have a specific tax question that you are concerned about, I would get that tax situation resolved, so that you are in compliance with another government agency. That taxes is something that the Immigration Service looks at and often asks about. How can one work for USCIS? Somebody asked us last night. What is it? USA Jobs, I think. Let me see here. Hold on. Yeah, go on to USA Jobs. That is the website where I think the majority of federal government open postings are listed, and apply. Someone is asking if a judge grants a 212H waiver and green card, can ICE/CBP ignore that order? So I don't handle deportation cases, which is what's happening or what has happened if you went in front of an immigration judge. So I would have a conversation with an immigration attorney that handles deportation cases and all the things that happen after that. It's Daily, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is asking if I offer consultations. I do. You can click the link in the bio. We're still here waiting. Next month will be a month since the interview. A month past an interview does not freak me out, at all. That is 4 weeks. If you are a month past your interview, do you know what that tells me? That tells me that your interview happened directly before the federal government shut down. That doesn't concern me at all in terms of being a red flag. Is it irritating? Does it suck? Do you want an answer? Yes, you do want an answer, but that does not shock me. That does not cause me to be concerned. A month past the interview in the middle of a government shutdown. That literally tells me you had your interview like right before the government shutdown. So lots of stuff happening inside the agency. So I would, as impatient as I am myself, I would tell you that you need to sit tight. Let's see here. What else do we have? Thanks for the follow, guys. I appreciate it, and thanks for the hearts. Yeah, Amazon got us. So you gotta just kind of go about life for the moment. There's a lot happening inside the agency. Married 8 years, moved here 3 years, have my citizenship interview soon. Should I go with my spouse? So the citizenship interview is for one person. So can your spouse be in the car? Sure. Some will even let them into the building, although that is quite rare nowadays if they're not applying and you don't need their physical assistance to get into the building. But a citizenship interview is a single person endeavor. It is one person interviewed at a time. So your spouse will not be able to be in the interview room with you, and many local offices will not even let your spouse into the building. So if you'd like them to drive with you there or take the train there or whatever, and be outside, give you a hug before you go in, that's certainly allowed. But a lot of times they're not even going to be allowed into the building. But good luck on your interview. Let's see here. Thanks for joining my fan club. I appreciate it. What else do we have? I have my interview next month for a green card, but they have not approved my work permit. Okay. So here's how I would have you think about that. Yes, it is incredibly irritating that your work authorization has not been approved. Done. Like, just let's just put that on the table. Like, you are incredibly irritated about that, and I get it. You haven't said it, but you are. I know you are. I get it, because everybody's irritated by that. However, if you have your interview for your green card next month, and while it is irritating that you do not have work authorization right now, or it's irritating that you don't have your work permit. I don't know that you don't have work authorization. If your green card is approved next month, then you don't need them to approve your work permit. So I would focus on the green card interview and preparing for that, and sort of letting go of worrying and being irritated by the fact that your work permit is not approved, because your green card carries more weight. Your green card lets you work and travel and live here. Your work permit only lets you work. So I would focus on the fact that you have an interview for your green card next month, rather than the fact that you don't have your work permit. That's how I would think of it. That's, if you were my client, that is what I would tell you. Sort of reshifting and refocusing your thoughts. What else do we have? And good luck on your interview next month. Hold on 1 second. I'm a slow scroller. You guys know that about me. My husband's case requested, they changed his case from Haiti to Bahamas. Will they provide a visa? If he needs a visa to get into the Bahamas, then he should apply for that visa. Will the Bahamas give him a visa? I have no idea. And he won't know until he applies. But I would apply sooner rather than later, if he needs a visa, and you know when the interview date is. But yeah, if you are, there are some countries that don't have active U.S. Diplomatic relations, and therefore we don't have embassies and consulates there. So citizens of those specific countries are sent to other U.S. consulates in a different country for processing. So when that happens, you need to ensure that if you need a visa to get into that third country, that you work on that as soon as possible, because even though that is where the U.S. consulate, the U.S. government is telling you to, even though the U.S. government is telling you to go there, it is you are responsible for getting into the country. The U.S. government is not going to help you with that visa process. So that's actually a really good question that you asked. So keep that in mind. Don't just show up at the airport like, I was told to come here. I have an interview, because that country's officers are going to look at you like you're nuts, right? So if you need a visa to get there, then you want to start looking into that sooner rather than later. Hold on. Are minors exempt from the permanent bar? I don't know if they're exempt from the permanent bar, but minors, because at some point they're not going to be minors, but minors do not accrue unlawful presence. So if that is the permanent bar that you're referring to, and have multiple entries as a minor, I would ask that specific question to an attorney that does deportation defense. They will know the answer to your permanent bar, last entry at age 15, multiple entries as a minor question. But I'm assuming that they're not a minor now. And if they're still here, then that's a whole other can of worms that is occurring, a whole other bevy of questions that I would have. But I would talk with an attorney that handles deportation defense cases. My husband has his work permit and was offered a really great job. That's a 6-month project. Can he go? It's out of state. As long as it's, I would think, I'm assuming it's just a plain Jane adjustment of status based EAD. If he has a work authorization, like a work authorization document, an employment authorization document, we often call them EADs. If that EAD is not tied to, or his work authorization is not tied to a specific employer, if his work authorization allows him to work anywhere, then he can go work anywhere. I mean, that's kind of the point of work authorization that allows you to work anywhere. There are several work authorization categories that only allow you to work for the company that has sponsored you. But if he has what I like to call free range, kind of like chickens, if he has free range work authorization, he can work anywhere he wants. He can work in California, he can work in Connecticut, he can work in New York, he can work in Texas, work in Oklahoma, shouldn't matter. But if there's a reason why you are concerned about your spouse with work authorization moving and working out of another state, then that is a question. Then that flips into the can you versus should you analysis. Can you? Yes. Should you? Don't know. Done. My I-130 was approved after inter about a year ago, but the 45 is still pending. Any advice? I have no legal advice. What I will say is this. The fact that the 45 is still pending will depend on if it is a preference category, it will depend on the visa bulletin. So the 45 could actually rightfully be pending. If it's not a preference category, if it is an immediate relative, then I would look at the processing times on the USCIS website. If you are outside of those processing times, then I would ping USCIS and ask them, was it? But I can't tell you that. I don't know, because I don't know enough about the application. I can't tell you whether or not I think a year for a pending is a red flag in and of itself. That I don't know. I would have to know a lot more. I did my interview, and an RFE was sent for an updated medical. Can I contact after a response was received? Can you contact USCIS? Yeah, you can. But again, this is sort of a can you versus should you. There is no set time for the Immigration Service to respond on a family-based case after an RFE has been submitted, or a response to an RFE has been submitted. Would we like a response in a week? Absolutely, we would. I would be absolutely elated if I got responses that quickly. But the fact of the matter is that officer who sent the RFE, that same officer is getting your same case back. They have not been sitting at their desk twiddling their thumbs waiting on your response. They've been processing other cases. They've been clearing other cases. They've been getting other cases on their desk. So while your case doesn't go to the absolute back of like the big line, it goes into the line on that particular officer's desk. So that is a good thing. So it's a good thing that you don't go to like the end of like the big line, but you are going somewhere, most likely at the back of the officer's desk line. And that will depend on, how big that line is, depends on that office and the workload of that office. So oftentimes I get questions that say, I filed the RFE, how long is it going to take? My answer is usually as long as it takes, right? As long as it's not like excessive, then it's not a red flag. Like, we just have to be patient. And I say this from the bottom of my heart. I am not a patient person. If you had spent my day with me today, you'd realize I'm not a patient person. But we're dealing with a government agency here, right? So like there's just a certain amount of patience that we have to, to have when we are dealing with immigration. So I don't know how long it's going to take for USCIS to respond to. It will depend on the type of application. It'll depend on the office, and it'll depend on the officer, and it'll depend on the workload. So lots of things. It is a massive workflow. It is a massive workflow from the time an application enters a USCIS building to the time a decision flows out of the building. It is. I have seen it. It is a massive operation. It is a logistics, situation. It is a process. It is a workflow. And sometimes I admit there are glitches in the matrix, but we have to give it a chance to work. My nephew did his interview in August. I don't know interview for what. They had for spouse. Maybe they had a lot of joint documents. He's still waiting for an answer. Yes, he's still waiting for an answer. He did. Y'all, I love you guys so much. An interview in August, right? Federal government has been shut down all of October. So depending on, let's say it was October 1. We're like 2 real months in. I understand everybody wants things done quickly and everybody wants things done now. We're working with the government. That's just not how it happens. That's just not how it happens. So 2 real months, does that concern me? That does not throw up red flags for me. That does not. There are other folks out here who will scream and yell and bang their fists on the table and be like, oh my God, that's horrible. That's not me. That's just not me. Now if you told me we were like at like a year, you told me we were like at 4 years, okay, that's excessive, right? But you've got to give the process a chance. And if there were more documents submitted, then the officer has to look at those documents, right? So this is not just a matter of the officers is not just going to take our word for things. Like that's not their job. Their job is just not to sort of blindly take in documents and be like, okay, great, approved. Like their job is to actually look at documents. And after an interview, there are often things behind the scenes that need to happen before an approval notice is mailed out the door. There are often things. It is a process. So again, I get that folks want their stuff like yesterday, but not gonna happen. Definitely not gonna happen with a closed federal government. Like it's just not gonna happen. And I get it. I get it. Like I am not patient myself, but I mean, we just have to be. Someone has asked, how do you explain so calm, very sweet and interesting? Just makes me want to listen more and more. First of all, thank you. I appreciate that. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Like and while I get that this is stressful and creates a lot of anxiety for people, I do understand that. I honestly do. My effectiveness does not happen if I let my emotions go up and down with you all are, and with my clients, right? So my clients are going to go up and down, right? They're going to read something, they're going to hear something, and they're going to freak out about it. My job is to stay nice and steady and even, right? My job is to get you to the end with as little anxiety as possible. Will there be no anxiety? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Y'all are worried. It's your livelihood. It's your life. You're worried about yourselves, your spouses, your friends, your family, your children. So I get it, right? But I can't be up and down like that. And I've seen, so I described this, I think it was last night I said this. So some of the things that are happening now are not new, right? They seem new because my clients and you all have never been through them before, but I have, right? So to me, it's kind of like those jeans, those now vintage jeans. I don't particularly like people calling my jean style vintage, but apparently it is, right? Like it's now they're vintage, but when I first got them, they were new and shiny and amazing and fit really, really well, right? And then they came out of style, or things changed, and now they're new again, or seemingly new again. They're new again to a different set of folks. But for me, they're just like, yay, my favorite style of jeans are back in play, right? So a really good example of that is when I started practicing, it was very rare that you could apply for a visa in a country that was not your home country. That was very, very rare. We had to go through all the hoops, and we had to reach out to the consulate. This was back when they would actually let you call the consulate and speak to somebody, usually for maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours during the day on certain days of the week. We could actually stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, our time, to get local time, their time, and actually have a conversation with them. Those days are long gone, right? But then over time, they completely got rid of that. They completely got rid of our ability to do that. They stopped talking to us in that way, in that manner, right? So now we're back to the place where you can't apply for a visa outside of your home country. So we've had this whole time in the middle where we could, right? And in some cases they would talk to us, sometimes they wouldn't, right? We had this whole block of years in the middle where they would let you do that. And COVID really helped with that. COVID, they were like, listen, all bets are off. Like, y'all go wherever you are and feel comfortable going. We're like, yay. But now that's been stopped. But for me, I'm like, okay, well, we've absolutely dealt with that before. We've absolutely practiced under that. Is it not as flexible? Absolutely. Is it the end of the world? No, because I remember years ago when I started practicing, that was the norm, right? So it's just a matter of keeping on track of things and just explaining them, right? Like, it doesn't, like, all the changes that we're experiencing aren't the end of the world. It's taking away some of our flexibility, but I am determined to work through them, right? I'm determined to work through them. So all that to say, I very much appreciate your comment. But my job is to try and keep my clients as calm as possible, and get them to their desired end result. How to transfer an I-130 case for the interview due to the embassy being closed in the resident country. NVC and Department of State have, if there are no diplomatic ties, and therefore there are no embassies and consulates open, or if the embassy is closed for whatever reason, NVC and the Department of State have designated a country that will accept those applications. So that would be a conversation with NVC, assuming your case is at the NVC stage. Sorry. Let's see here. Thanks for the follow, guys. I appreciate it, and the sharing. I have the pending 45, got in a fight with husband, and went to jail. If no conviction, can it be approved? You. have asked a fantastic question. So whenever there is any sort of criminal history, criminal happening, criminal background, anywhere in the world at any time prior to the application that you are doing or while the application is currently pending, my recommendation is that you have a conversation, you have a consultation, and you retain a lawyer so that that lawyer can do a criminal analysis to see if there will be any negative impact on your case. Just because a case is labeled a misdemeanor in state court doesn't mean that immigration is going to see it as a misdemeanor. I cannot emphasize this enough for people. Just because the judge says, okay, you are done, you don't have to mention this case to anybody else. That is not the case when it comes to immigration. The immigration questions are worded so broadly now. This is one of the things that we've seen change over the years, over the almost 30 years of my practice. The questions have been made so broad that it really catches anything that you've ever done. So got into a fight with your husband, wound up going to jail. I don't know if you mean you were put in, sort of like the drunk tank for a night so everybody could cool off. I don't know if that means you went through a trial, you were convicted and you served, 6 months, 2 years. I don't know what that means, right? I don't know what the actual crime was. I don't know what state this happened in. I don't know the laws of the state. These are all the details and more that you need to provide to an attorney who can do that analysis for you. So anytime there's any sort of criminal background, any sort of criminal history, my recommendation is that you get a lawyer involved as soon as possible so that you know what your options are, and what may come from the criminal charges or the conviction or the jail time or whatever it is. Anytime there's been law enforcement contact. So I know that does not actually answer your question because I cannot actually answer your question because your question brings up way more questions than it does answers. Is it okay for an asylee with a green card to travel using the original country passport? I would think so, but I don't know. I would talk with someone who does asylum cases all day, every day, and that is not me. Asylum is generally not something that my office handles. In fact, the last time I touched an asylum case, I was in law school. That was many, many moons ago. So you want to speak with someone who does asylum cases all day, every day. Not someone who dabbles in asylum, but someone who does asylum all day, every day. How long to get an answer after you refile? I would look at the USCIS website and see what the processing times are. Because when you refile, you're just essentially filing like a whole new application, right? So just whatever the current processing times are. So I would go on the USCIS website and look at the processing times for the type of case that you are filing. Because you didn't say. Wait, are you asking if you can travel to your home country or can you travel with your home country's passport? Because someone has answered you, but I don't know that they've answered the question that you're asking. So as an asylee, I know that you should not be going back to your home country. That's not okay. But whether or not you can use your original country passport, let's say you're going to a third country, I would speak with someone who does asylum all day, every day. Be that cut off, so I don't. There's interesting. It's pleasure for green card. Hold on. Is it normal for someone who filed an I-130 since June of 2021, got sponsored for a green card, be still waiting today? It could be. I don't know what category it is. I will tell you if it is an I-130 U.S. citizen sibling, filing for a sibling overseas, yeah, that's like super normal, right? Depends on whether or not you're in a preference category. And then if you're in a preference category, USCIS is going to prioritize the I-130s kind of along the lines of the visa bulletin, right? So it doesn't make any sense for them to process a case where they know the visa bulletin is taking like 11 million years versus a case where the visa bulletin, or versus a case where they're not subject to the visa bulletin. So I don't know, if you're in a preference category, yes, that may actually make sense. Some standalone I-130s are taking over a year right now. So it could be, I just don't know enough about your individual circumstances, but I would look at the USCIS website and see what the processing time is. What are my thoughts on amending an answer on the 45 at the interview? So, and this will probably be the last question I answer, guys. I gotta take a bit more work to do tonight. So in general, I think 45s get amended at the interview all the time. And they get amended for things like typos, maybe you've moved, that sort of thing. It's not the end of the world to amend something to amend your 45 at the interview. Now, regarding unauthorized work or regarding like big things, I think it is always the best practice to tell the truth. Understand if you are amending unauthorized work that occurred before you filed that application, the officer is going to have some extra questions. They're going to want to know why that didn't make it into the original application. If you are amending or you are wanting to reference unauthorized work after the filing of the application, or you're wanting to amend things that occurred after the filing of the application, well, then you're not really amending the application. You're having a conversation with the officer about, things that happened post-filing. Remember, an application, this is what I tell my clients, an application is a snapshot in time. It is one day. It is a snapshot as of the day you either upload your application or you put it in the mail, right? That's the snapshot. Things are absolutely going to change after that, right? You might move after that. You might get divorced after that. You might get divorced and remarried after that. Like all the things can happen. You may have a child after that. You may, all the things. You may move states. All these things can happen. But if you're talking about amending unauthorized work that happened before you filed, be very prepared for the officer to look at you a little cockeyed and be like, well, why did that not make it onto the application when you filed? So I am all for and always tell people to tell the truth during their interview, but be prepared to be asked questions about why that information did not make it into the original application. So that would be my musings on that issue. But in general, I think I've amended a lot of applications in the interview. for typos, transposed numbers, that sort of thing. Maybe an I before E except after C misspelling type of thing. Yeah, so it'll, just be, if you're trying to amend something that was in play before you filed, just be prepared to explain why it didn't make it into the original application. And there could be a perfectly reasonable explanation. But I would also recommend that before you go to that interview, that you get an attorney to go with you and have that conversation with that attorney so that you are fully prepared and have a game plan at the interview, and have that attorney sort of walk you through, if A then B, if C then D, if X then Y, if A then B then X, you know what I mean? So that you walk into that interview prepared, as opposed to walking into that interview completely like freaked out. So those are my musings on that. And on that note, I think that was actually a really good question. That was like a super, super, super good question. I don't know that I've had that question before, so thanks. I am going to hop off now. I want to go eat my dinner, and I've got a few more things for work that I need to do. I will be back. I may, I'm not going to promise. I may be live this weekend, as people are in a Halloween candy coma. But I should be live Monday through Thursday of next week, 7-ish. I may try to go live a little bit earlier. We'll see, but I always say that. We'll see, but it'll probably be around like 7-ish with a focus on the ish. If y'all know me, those of you that hop on all the time know 7 o'clock on the dot rarely happens. But it has been fun. It's been good. Again, I'm Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. My office we're headquartered down in sunny South Florida, but I work with clients in all 50 states. So if you are looking for someone who is a little bit funny, a whole lot sarcastic to work with, who used to work inside the agency, click the link in the bio, schedule a consult. All of my client relationships start with a consult, so I can figure out what's happening, what your goal is, and how we can get you there, how we can get you where you want to be. So this has been fun. I will see you guys on Monday evening, and have a great weekend. If you are into Halloween, have a wonderful, wonderful Halloween. Get all the candy, since I'm trying really hard not to have any candy this Halloween. So I will chat with you guys on Monday. Have a good evening. Bye, y'all.